What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and it feels like we are full swing into gaming 2025. So last week I talked about KCD2, which I put out my first impressions video, and I guess technically I still haven't beaten the game yet. And it's my game of the year by default because it's the only full release that I've played so far in 2025. But I have a hard time thinking that game is going to get dethroned at any time during this year because it's incredible. Yes, I haven't beaten it yet, and I guess technically it could still shit the bed, but it's been a phenomenal game and I've been really digging it. But by the time this video comes out, maybe Avowed has already dethroned it because that game will have come out by the time I post this video. So we have two major releases. We've also had the Xbox Developer Direct that I talked about a few weeks ago, and we got Sony's first showcase recently with their state of play. Of course, I've watched that showcase and I want to talk about it. So without further ado, let's rock. But a couple of quick disclaimers before we get started. Unlike the Xbox Developer Direct, which their strategy was more, okay, we're only going to talk about 4 games, but we're going to do a deep dive into those 4 games. The State of Play strategy was more kind of like Game Awards or E3 used to be, which was more rapid fire. We're going to show you a lot of games, but we're not going to really talk too much about each game. So it was much more quantity over quality, so to speak. And as far as this video goes, I do want to mention that, and I say this a lot, one of the reasons why I love gaming so much is there's so many great games in all these great genres. I can't play everything as much as I try to, and as much as it feels like I play everything, I don't even come close to scratching the surface of everything that comes out. So I'm just gonna touch on the stuff that I thought was interesting from the state of play, but there was a lot more. I would suggest, I will link the full state of play in the video description. I would suggest going to watch all of it. I'm just gonna talk about the stuff that I thought was really interesting. And just because I don't bring up something that you thought was cool doesn't mean that it's not valid that you thought it was cool. Like, I'm happy for Digimon fans. I'm happy for Borderlands fans that you got these games revealed during the showcase, but it's not something that I'm into, so I'm not going to talk about those games. So with that out of the way, let's dive into the state of play. And I think the easiest way to do this video is just go in alphabetical order. All right, so we will start with a game that I did not even know existed, and that game is Darwin's Paradox, which honestly kind of feels like a game that was made just for me. Some of my favorite games of all time are these weird platformers that you may or may not have heard of, like Limbo or Inside and so on and so forth. And Darwin's Paradox feels like it has similar vibes, but with an octopus. And I love animals, and octopods are such fascinating creatures, so I'm definitely excited for this one. And we got a decent amount of gameplay, and it looks really cool. Using the camouflage to hide from enemies is really interesting to me. Speaking of vibes, the next game I want to talk about is Directive 8020, which reminded me of a mix of Alien and The Thing, which for me is like a match made in heaven. I love those films. It's developed by Supermassive Games, which made Until Dawn and The Quarry. Directive 8020 is considered a dark pictures like Until Dawn, so it will be the same style of those games. It's basically an interactive movie where you have certain choices and QT events. And I like those games for what they are. It's not necessarily my favorite genre, but I do play them, and I really love horror sci-fi, so I'm definitely going to check this one out. And I especially appreciate and love that it's coming out in October, which is kind of spooky season. And so I love that this horror sci-fi game is coming out in October. It feels like it fits the season really well. So the next game I want to talk about is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. Let's talk about Dreams of Another, which seems like this mind trip of a third-person shooter where instead of destroying things when you shoot your gun, you actually create things. And I really like the idea of creating with guns instead of destroying. If I had to guess, I'd imagine the game's going to work very similar to if you played The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, where you kind of slowly unlock different things that you can create. I imagine this game is going to work very similarly. However, with the other games that we've talked about, this is definitely going to be a game where I'm going to wait until the reviews come out. I typically don't. If it's something that I'm interested in, I typically just play it because I like to play games and I like to make up my own mind about games. But some of these more conceptual, kind of weirder games don't always work. And while I respect the effort making a different type of game, gaming is already an expensive hobby, and I'm not going to spend money on a game like Dreams of Another if I don't have to. So I'm definitely going to wait for the reviews to come out, but it did catch my eye, so I wanted to bring it up. Another game that caught my eye was Hell Is Us, which is this sci-fi, which I've already talked about is one of my favorite genres, but it's a sci-fi Soulsborne-esque type of game. And like I said, I love sci-fi and I've been playing a lot of Soulsborne games the last few years. So I'm definitely intrigued by this game. It reminded me a lot of Returnal, which is weird because we actually got a new game from the developer of Returnal later in this showcase. But as I was watching this reveal, I was like, man, this kind of reminds me of Returnal. So it was just kind of coincidence that we got a game later in the showcase that was actually made by the same people that made Returnal. Speaking of Soulsborne games, we are getting a Lies of P DLC called Overture, which I'm very excited for this. I really enjoyed the base game. I thought at first when they announced that they were making this Soulsborne Pinocchio game, I was like, all right, so we're getting kind of gimmicky. But I was pleasantly surprised at how good the actual game was. Maybe it was a gimmick, but the gimmick worked and the game is really good. So I'm happy that we have Lies of P, and I'm really happy that it connected with people and that it's getting this DLC in September. However, I'm not sure I will be playing the Lies of P DLC at launch because we officially have a release date for Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, which, side note, it's too long of a title. And it is actually releasing a couple of weeks prior to the Lies of P DLC. So I'm not sure I'll play that right at launch because I'll still be playing Snake Eater. Now, this is kind of the worst kept secret in gaming recently. It had been leaked that the game was going to be releasing on August 28th before the showcase, but it now is official that that's the release date, and I cannot fucking wait. I'm sure eventually I will get tired of remakes, especially if they continue to make money. Gaming companies are going to continue to make them, just like there's a bunch of like remakes and sequels for movies of established IPs. We're going to continue getting video game remakes, but as of right now, I haven't gotten tired of these remakes yet, and I have very high hopes for this one because I think it could be really awesome. I talked earlier about Darwin's Paradox being a game that I felt like was made explicitly for me, which, side note, terrible business model, making a game explicitly for some just rando on the internet. But the Midnight Walk, the next game I want to talk about, feels very similar. It's not a similar game to Darwin's Paradox, but obviously it checks a lot of my weird boxes. So this has obviously never come up on this channel before, because why would it? But I love stop motion animation, especially like claymation. I love movies like Paranorman, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and of course, The Nightmare Before Christmas. And this game clearly takes a lot of inspiration from The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I love. I think this game looks so cool. It reminds me a lot of Little Nightmares as well, which if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know how much I love the Little Nightmares games. I am a little bit nervous about this game. I was digging it. I was digging the trailer that we saw during the State of Play until I saw the first person shooter aspect of this game. I'm not sure how that's gonna work. I wasn't a huge fan of a game called Scorn that I actually did review. I think it was a couple of years ago when it first came out, which was also a first person shooter and it had not necessarily the exact same vibe, but a very similar like horror type of vibe to it. And I just didn't think it worked very well, especially as a first person shooter. So hopefully it's more Little Nightmares than it is Scorn. Either way, I'm definitely gonna give this a shot. It looks really, really cool. All right, so moving right along, we are down to the last two games I want to talk about from this showcase. The first being Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I vaguely remember playing a Shinobi game at like an arcade once or twice when I was little, but that was years and years ago. Obviously, I don't consider myself a fan of the series, but this game did catch my eye because I've been playing a lot of Metroidvania games lately. I talked about Prince of Persia: The Last Crown and Nine Souls recently, and I'm definitely gonna play Silk Song if it ever comes out. So this game definitely got my attention. It gave me very strong The Messenger vibes. If you've ever played that game fucking rules. If you're a fan of these types of games and you never played The Messenger, stop this video right now, or maybe just wait a couple more minutes because it's almost over. But you definitely need to play The Messenger because that game fucking rules. And this game reminded me a lot of that. So I'm really excited for Shinobi Art of Vengeance. On to the last game. And if I remember correctly, it may have actually been the last game in the whole showcase as well. So that's kind of funny that it just kind of worked out that way. And I'll be real quick with this one because it was just a cinematic trailer. It didn't have any actual gameplay and it was relatively short as well. Well, I did mention Returnal earlier. The studio Housemarque that made that game showed off their new game, Saros. And there's not much to talk about because, like I said, it was only a cinematic trailer with Rahul Kohli, which I apologize. I can't imagine I pronounced that correctly, but he's an actor most well known for being in some of the Mike Flanagan Netflix shows, which I'm a huge fan of. I love Mike Flanagan, so I watch all of his stuff. I assume it's going to have a similar type of gameplay as Returnal, which is a game that I really, really need to circle back to. I enjoyed it, but it was hard as fuck and I never actually beat it. So there you have it. Those are all the games that were showed off during the most recent State of Play that I thought was interesting, minus Split Fiction. They did show that game off as well, but I didn't want to bring it up here just because we kind of already know about that game. It's coming out in like a month. So I am excited about that game. My wife and I have already talked about playing it like we did with It Takes Two, but I didn't think I needed to bring it up just because we kind of already know about that game. Now on to my thoughts about the showcase in general. So I know a lot of people were upset after this State of Play that there weren't bigger games announced. And I know that there was some Bloodborne fans that wished that they were going to have some Bloodborne news. I know there was a lot of rumors around maybe a remake or a remaster or whatever, maybe even a sequel. And I know that some Marvel fans were upset that we didn't get a update on Wolverine. I personally would have loved to gotten a release date on Death Stranding 2. So that was kind of a bummer. But, and this is kind of a general philosophy I have in life, I think that we should appreciate the things that we did get, because there were some cool games that they did show off in the State of Play. Did we get some huge bangers? No, not really. But I think it was okay. Like Darwin's Paradox, I think is a really cool looking game. The Midnight Walk, like there was a lot of like indie games that I thought looked really interesting. So overall, I was satisfied. Was it everything I wanted? No, but I think we just need to chill sometimes with these showcases. We want them to give us everything, and then when we don't get everything, we're disappointed. And I just think that that's kind of a shitty way to think about this kind of stuff. Just appreciate the things that you got and like it for what it is instead of hating it because it's not what you wanted it to be. Honestly, my biggest issue with this, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, is Sony's approach to being kind of this rapid fire showcase. I would much rather them go with the Xbox Developer Direct strategy of more of a deep dive. I would rather have less games in these types of showcases where we actually got to know more about the game and even the development of the game, like the Claire Obscure game, the Expedition 33. That game where we got to actually learn about the development process, I thought was really, really interesting. In this showcase, it was just like game after game after game after game. And I personally prefer the Xbox Direct strategy of giving us a deeper dive. But of course, that's just my opinions on the PlayStation State of Play. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Let me know if I missed anything. If you were really excited about a particular reveal and I didn't mention it in this video, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Of course, if you're watching it this far into this video, I assume that you enjoyed this video, so definitely smash that like button, as the kids say. Consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell, that way you're notified every time I post another video. I try to post weekly gaming related content. I've actually been on quite a roll recently, mostly because I've really been digging Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, so I've been putting a lot of content about that game. So definitely, if you like this type of content, which you obviously do if you made it this far in the video, definitely consider subscribing and ding that bell. But until next video, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy, and we were just talking and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?